Hey there, welcome back to Owl Dragon Adventures. I'm Scott Kegler.
And I'm Rob McPherson.
And this is our review of One Deck Galaxy by Asmadi Games. So this is One Deck Galaxy, designed by Cieslik. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But this is, as I said, published by Asmadi Games. And you can tell us a little bit about it, Rob.
Yeah, so this is a spiritual successor, really, to One Deck Dungeon, which came out a few years back now. And the theme of this game is that you are taking on the persona of a civilization somewhere in the galaxy, and you are taking on kind of a sect of their civilization, a class of their
a homeworld and society.
Society, it's right on the card.
Yep.
So you're taking on the homeworld, then you take on the society. So in this case, like we've got the Timtillawinks explorers. So it just gives you
yeah, they are called Timtillawinks, and they are space pirates.
Yep, they absolutely are. So one of them kind of gives you the theme and how you I'll let you get into mechanics later, but how you your strengths, and the other one is kind of how you level up your society.
Right, versus the last game you chose like a class.
Right.
And now it's like you're kind of doing that, but as a society.
Yeah. So the theme of this game is that you're going out, you're exploring and cataloging or conquering, depending on what your society wants to do, the galaxy. And yeah, that's kind of it. And it's just in a single deck, hence One Deck Galaxy.
Right. So from the mechanics side, like in the earlier games, you were basically going through a dungeon crawl, doing a roguelike dungeon crawler where you would go through doors, which were the deck, where they would be laid out in a grid of 4, where this is a discovery of planets. On your turn, and every turn, you'll start off with the adversary who is competing against you, like the boss was in the previous games, but they are there to do certain effects. They are all asymmetrical. They have a series of actions that happen on their turn based on the faction you chose. I don't have the card up here right now, but there's like a little cheat sheet, which is helpful. Yep. They also have, I've separated it here, but on the bottom of the deck, there's also an adversary event deck, which will be something that triggers if you get all the way down, where in the previous games, you would get to a staircase to the next level of the dungeon. Right. This will have an event that happens in the next round.
Right.
Then on your turn, you will, similar to the last game, you'll be rolling a pool of dice based off of your current colony abilities. So your energy, materials, and diplomacy are the 3 different types of dice here. And like in the last game, there's also a wild dice that you can use in combinations as well.
Yep.
And the other resource you have to use on this, on your turn, is these action tokens or tech tokens.
Tech tokens. That's it. Yep.
They replace basically the potions in the last game.
Mm-hmm.
So all those mechanics are very similar. They're going to be rolled and placed on either locations or on encounters. And you will solve those, and those are going to be used to add, basically actions under your homeworld or increase your dice pool for your homeworld. Yeah. And you'll continue doing this as you complete and influence colonies to add to your homeworld, to your society, and eventually level yourself up, which is a new feature in this game, is the Starbase part, where you will be leveling yourself up to have other abilities to attack your adversary, removing these tokens as you do so, and if you remove the last one, you win the game. If at any time, though, you reach a overwhelm, which each adversary, and there are 5 in the base game here.
Yep.
Every time, if you get overwhelmed, you lose the game immediately. So it's an objective-based loss. And that is essentially the mechanics in the game. Just dice management, puzzle, as you're doing these kind of set collections.
Yep. So that's a great summary of it. Different from, what was I going to say? There was something different from One Deck Dungeon that...
the Starbase is very unique. It's a new feature, which is, again, it's still a dice management puzzle, but it's allowing you to do other things. Unless you build up a pool of these spaceships and science, which are 2 new resources that can be used in other ways to get other rerolls in the game.
So what I was going to say is the discovery is different from the dungeon of old because... you work on these cards over multiple rounds.
Right.
Whereas in One Deck Dungeon, you fought and you defeated a monster and you took it and you went. Whereas these, like, you can get as much as 2 influence on this card, but you need 3 to defeat it. So you can never defeat it in a single round.
Right, and rather than when you reveal a trap, like these are all revealed as soon as they're placed.
Yeah.
So it's there in these encounters, and if you don't deal with them, eventually they time out, and they do what's called a it's escalate.
Escalate.
So an escalate happens, and that's something bad that triggers from the adversary.
Yeah.
So like you don't have to just open a door and deal with this threat, this trap, whatever. You can let them sit or work on them, but there's some issues.
You can gauge. It's like, okay, maybe one escalate's not bad because once they escalate, also they leave. So it's not like that's going to trigger multiple times. So it's like, I can deal with that because I want to deal with this right now. So
the other major difference is I know we have these tech tokens replacing the potions from the previous game, but they are you get this resource every turn.
Yep.
Where the potions you only got them at certain times in the game, like level ups, I believe.
Yep.
And so they're a little bit more of a steady resource in the game, which adds to more mitigation options. Overall, in the gameplay of One Deck Galaxy, much more mitigation. So if you played the other games and were frustrated by a roll, I can't do anything, great, I'm going to take damage, and eventually I die.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest complaints I always heard against One Deck Dungeon. I didn't mind it as much because I knew what I was getting into, but it's that the mitigation options just weren't there in force.
Right.
And you were really at the whims of the dice. This game, you're still at the whims of the dice, but there's a lot more things that you can do about it. And because of the addition of the Starbase, there's a lot more things you can do with the dice that might not help you immediately, but will help you downstream.
Yeah, you can set up for next round. Yeah. And I really do feel like the fleet and the science options, too, give you a lot of additional mitigation because the fleet can be used.
What's the biggest fleet you've acquired?
I think I've had to do like 12.
Okay,
yeah. No, 14 because I had to take out the...
Okay.
I had to do 14 in one turn to fight the
Nibel Woobers.
Yeah, I will also say from a gameplay side, it's much sillier than the previous games. But that a lot of information on the gameplay. Yeah. There's obviously, I think, a lot more agency, a lot more strategy, a lot more mitigation in this from the previous games. But in a lot of ways, it's the same scaffolding here, the same core mechanics here.
Yeah, you can definitely see One Deck Dungeon in this game, but you can also see that they sat with One Deck Dungeon. They looked at what worked, what didn't work, and how they could just add to it.
Right. Absolutely. So from a gameplay side, I really enjoyed this more so than I ever did. I think you've always liked the One Deck Dungeon games a bit more than me. I didn't dislike them, but it was just like it
didn't scratch enough itches.
No, it was like a 6.5 game for me, where it's like I'd play it.
Yep.
You know, my son really enjoys it, so I'd break out the 2-player variant of it and I'd play it with him.
Yep.
But it wasn't doing enough for me. This one really added a bit more of the puzzle for me that I really enjoyed in the game. Also, from a gameplay side, this is the deluxe edition of the game. The PVC cards from a tactile are wonderful to shuffle, so that's just a silly...
into quality now.
Well, I'm just talking about as far as... But it is a gameplay thing for me. This is like...
No, I
agree. It makes a difference.
The tokens are upgraded too.
Right, this makes a difference for me as the gameplay. They're both a curse and a blessing, though, because I also, from the previous game, there's a lot of tucking cards under other cards, and that can get a little tedious.
Yeah. Yep. No, I would agree with that, too.
But I don't know how else they would do it based on how they have the rules set up.
No, I will probably just start doing things like, instead of having my fleet actually cascade, I'll just like set them next to it. It'll take up more table space, but
I also was doing that with like the Nibel Woobers who I was playing the other night.
Yeah.
When I was doing the tracking of their influence, I was doing it above the card
instead of underneath it.
Because it was just because they have particularly cards that have tokens on them.
The token slide.
The tokens slide around, and having to tuck them underneath is a little frustrating. But I really like having that sound and that feel of the PVC cards. So still a medium to high gameplay experience for me.
Same. Yep, absolutely. I'm gonna land medium to high as well.
Next is accessibility. Now this is another area where I found the game once I got out of the way of the rule book.
Yeah.
I was able to kind of get flowing going, oh, okay, this is not that complicated.
Yeah.
So I think it's an easy game to learn, and you have to kind of keep your eyes open because there's a lot of little extra rules between the adversary special rules and your homeworld and your society.
And there's not a great iconography index. So like the one that got me for a little while when I was first playing it the first time is it says discard the amount of discovery cards as the adversary says. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I stare at the card, and I finally figured it out. And it does make sense once you know it. It's these little rectangles that have X's in them.
Right.
But all they had to do in the rule book was show that icon.
Right.
And it would have saved me about 5 minutes.
Right. And that was one of my biggest complaints with the rule book is there wasn't just an easy early rule book of breakdown of all of these cards and iconographies. Like here's, let me point like A through G of here's all the things on this card. Eventually I figured everything out and it is there in the rule book, but it's not put together in one solid spot. One quick area. I also, as someone who's big on adult learning, I do it in my day job. I think more rule books need to do a better job of like, give me the high level first.
Yep.
And then we'll get into the core mechanics of the game, where this one wants to kind of go very detailed with every step of the way.
Right, and it gets a little overwhelming.
Right,
for a game that shouldn't be overwhelming. That's exactly what you're going to say.
Exactly. Well, and it's also like something I always point out to game designers that are doing rule books is I know like I love that they wanted to talk about how important influence was, but get into the flow of the game before you start telling me what's important in the game.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with the order of the way that things appeared in the rule book.
Do things from because you want it to be interactive kinesthetic learning, I find. So like explain to me this next part of the turn and go through that. Like what's going to happen here. And then this part, you can even do so high level. Say, here are the 4 phases, and now we'll talk through phases 1 through 4, and we'll even walk you through a turn. That's going to be more helpful with a game like this because I'd go, oh, this isn't that complicated.
I'm going to eat my words. There's an iconography library right here.
There is, and I did appreciate the adversary quick reference guide too. Like there's a little breakdown.
So you know how I said that if they just had say what it says, I take it back.
Very well, but I still find that and the adversary guide was great. I did like that, but I just think the rule book was not ideal for me. Not horrible. I've seen much worse rule books, but it just was a little bit of a ding for me.
I think my only problem with I think it's a missed opportunity with this adversary quick guide because there's not much more in here than there is on the little quick card that it comes with it. And there are some things that I'm like looking at the quick card and I don't quite understand it. So I pick this up and I read it and it's the exact same paragraph. And I'm like, that doesn't help me.
Or at the very least, I did find sometimes I'm like, oh, I think this means that. And then it would just say what I thought it said, but just with a few extra words.
Yeah.
So
I think that the rules overall could have used another pass from the editor.
So it was kind of a low to mid for me on the rules from an accessibility side.
I agree with that.
But once I got into it and understanding how to do it, I love the idea of having asymmetrical adversaries. This is, it's a little more complicated, but again, a vast improvement from the last game. Because the last game was just like, oh, and this guy does more damage, you have to spend more dice on the boss.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it does fall into... So I will say, though, even though I have a ding against the rule books, one of my favorite games of all time falls into the exact same trap of the rule book makes the game harder. Too many bones.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just I
love too many bones.
And that's another one that wants to explain. It wants to explain like themes and things like that before we get to just tell me how a turn works. Yeah. And if I go, oh, the turn is just this, great, done. And then I'll get into the nuance, the detail of the game. Anyways, I don't want to beat up on it too much because I really did still enjoy the game.
Yeah, so I'd say overall mid accessibility, but the rules are really, really what hurt.
Right. Next would be design. Now, a lot of the layout of all the cards is very similar, where you had the dungeon doors set up like this, and all of the, I place this is a 5 blue. I'd have to place a 5 or 6 on there.
It's been so long since I played. I made my first playthrough of this so hard because I was thinking it had to be a perfect match.
Oh, no.
Instead of that number or higher. The game is so much more brutal when you do it that way.
I did like the little... I don't remember if the other games had these or not, where like you couldn't use certain dice of values there. I can't remember.
I think certain cards had them on there. I might be misremembering that, though.
But like otherwise, it's very simple. Like this is 20, so I'd have to get like...
Up to 20
that color. What's neat, though, about it is, particularly on the location cards, I love the influence types that you can get. Like you could spend this one and get 3 or this one and get 2.
Yep.
But I mean, kind of going back in the gameplay. But from a design, that's all easy. The texts are the same as skills. Everything is easy to read for the most part from a design standpoint. Yeah. Pretty much all the iconography is easy to follow too. It's consistent.
Especially when you're not an idiot and you actually see that it's on the back of this book.
Well, but even like things like I love that the token for the your federation.
Yep.
Is very easy to identify from the token and the card.
And I'm assuming those are just cardboard versions of those in the base game.
I assume so.
It's just fine.
But I liked the art. I liked all the alien adversaries. All looked kind of spooky. I did find it. We talked about this before. That the other two games have these kind of like fun, fantasy class characters. These cool all female character hero adventures. But they seem still pretty serious in tone.
Right.
And then you have
like we've got Dragon and Glooping Ooze and the Shadow.
But even the heroes all look kind of like B.A. Baracus over here.
Yeah.
And then we have the Tim Tillowinks.
And this location is You've Got Mailco.
Yeah. So it's much sillier in tone, and I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
From a design, even the art, it's just like you have this space pirate with
the weight better, I think,
with a funny little octopus with a cork in it or something on his shoulder.
I think it's a gelatinous blob
with it looks like a cork in his head. I don't.
No, I think it's a cracker. Probably got a cracker.
So it's much sillier, right? From the art style and some of the names of it. But I'm kind of here for it.
Yeah, as I said, I think it fits the weight class of it much better, and so it just leans into what it is.
Like I almost kind of wish there was, and I don't remember all the names of everything, but it all seemed much more serious in tone.
Yeah,
I like the silliness of it because it is a light game where I'm going through one deck.
Right.
And I'm just chucking dice. I don't want to have necessarily a serious theme with it, or I don't need a serious theme with it.
Right.
So I liked it. Even the scary adversary is the Nebel Woober colony
fleet. Yeah.
Awesome. So I am a high on design. I liked everything.
I'm a high on design as well. I think it was extremely well done. I agree. I think that the one deck dungeon was the same in terms of the design and everything. So I just think that they've got a really good grasp on what they're going for.
Quality.
Qualification, Deluxe Edition.
Yeah, Deluxe Edition, which is not terribly much more, I think, than their retail copy. I think their retail copies of the game was like $20-$30, right?
Yeah. And this was like 35.
This is 35 or 40.
Yeah.
These PVC cards, I want any type of solo game where I'm shuffling a lot to have these cards. They're amazing. I know they're terrible for the environment.
Yeah, no,
but they are just.
We used to be really snobs about we've got to have our linin cards, and now I'm like, yeah, linin's nice, but. Have you tried PVC?
Well, particularly with this game, it makes a difference. We just did a reaction to a new Kickstarter game that had PVC cards, and we're like, it made the game a better experience. The dice are the same kind of dice; they're fine.
They could have
been. I don't know with this game. I'm fine with the plastic, but I also
don't make the metal dice. I don't want to carry that around.
I do love the little tokens here.
Yep.
Everything on the quality of the box. It's a nice tight package for a solo game.
Yep. No, absolutely. I think the quality again of the deluxe edition is really, really good, especially for the money that we spent on it. Mm-hmm. Just really nice to have this option in a solo game.
Absolutely. Yep. And finally, value. So I've already played about 5 playthroughs of it so far, and and where I've kind of played maybe 5 each of these, and I could probably not play the one deck dungeon ones again and just play this and be perfectly fine. I've already got it down to what is that, $7 a play I've done on
right.
one
Yeah.
deck.
So the deluxe edition right now you can get on Noble Knight for $35. Let me see. Here we go. Here's their
official
page. Yep.
So I find that the value is there if you want a light, low setup solo game at the end of the night. I have a number of games like that I just like that are my, I have 2 kids, so sometimes when I get into a solo game, it's going to be after 9 or 10 o'clock. I don't necessarily want to get into a 2 or 3 hour solo game for that night, and this is in that perfect spot. So I can see myself tabling this a bunch more.
Yeah, base game seems available for $20.
Oh yeah, so if you wanted just the base game, you would easily get your value out of it. I think if you think you're going to like this, you like the science theme, you like chucking dice, I think you're going to get your value out of the game. Yeah,
no, absolutely. So we got the deluxe edition. I got the 2-packs. So I got a little bit of a discount on that. I think I paid $60 for both of them together, so I only paid $30. We only paid $30 a piece. but I feel like I'm already coming close to getting my value out of it, and yeah, we'll definitely be playing it more. So
yeah, and I still haven't even introduced it to my son who likes these type of games, so we'll try it 2-player.
We should play it 4-player at some point. It does play 4 if you bring 2 boxes together.
Oh, nice, very cool.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of value here. So that brings us to where we land with the game.
Yep.
Now, I had pointed out that I had some issues with the rule books, and I can kind of overcome those if I end up enjoying the game. It's like it's the return on investment there. And I don't always love the sliding cards under them as a mechanic in the game. Or not a mechanic, but a feature in the game, I guess. So actually, I'm right now at a 7.5, but leaning towards I could get to an 8 on multiple plays. I've only gone through 2 of the adversaries.
Yep.
And I haven't played all of the combinations of the homeworlds and societies. So right now I'm at that 7.5, just simply because there's a couple things that really...
I think we still both have that taste of the annoyance of the rule book in our mouths, but I'm going to land exactly where you are.
Yeah.
At a 7.5. I can see myself getting to 8. The way I can see myself getting to 8 is in the campaign.
Sure, yeah.
So it's a campaign. It's not really a campaign.
Right.
It's a campaign in the sense that, first of all, there's 24 different versions of it, which is cool.
Yeah, it's like a little tech tree campaign.
Yeah, and so you play, and then so you have your homeworld, your society, and your adversary.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of a playthrough, you cross off 2 of those, and you can't play with them for the rest of the campaign.
Right.
That's as much as the campaign works out. But then you get little bonuses to start the game and everything. So that really intrigues me. So I'm going to land at a 7.5 right now, but I can see that leading me towards an 8, especially once I understand the adversaries and their rules, and I no longer have to reference the book.
Right. And I will say, though, it's funny, like, where I'm interested to try this, and I will go through some of this as well. The game doesn't need it.
No,
the first games needed the campaign book because of how there was no mitigation. Like, all the mitigation in the core games were this, so it's kind of interesting. Like, this is a nice add-on, but it was like a necessary feature in the earlier games.
Although I will say, I do think that that's going to be necessary for me to beat anything with the mathematicians.
Fair enough. Well, maybe that's what it's there for, because they might be the hardest one to do. Yeah. I found, if you're starting off the game, I'd highly recommend the Explorers. Tim Tillowinks with the Explorers are a nice, easy starter.
I think that's what I started with, too, actually.
So really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment. If you liked this content, make sure to like and subscribe. Otherwise, we wish you good luck with all of your future board game adventures.
And thank you for joining us on ours.